This is Adam Gopnik of the New Yorker magazine and many books and many lectures. I'm sitting here in my New York living room on day 15 of our own particular quarantine at this strangest of strange times. I've been trying to keep an eye on New York, though, from a window and on the street in the time that this has been going on. I wrote a long piece for the New Yorker magazine called Abundance of Caution, which was my attempt to survey the city in the last week of near normalcy. I went everywhere from Grand Central, where we stood in the whispering gallery, what I love to call to my children the tile telephone, where you can speak in one corner and the Guastavino tile carries it right across the ceiling to another corner. From there to a family arriving anxiously at JFK, and beyond to people in Hasidim in Williamsburg I spoke with as well. All of the many faces of New York. And we're acutely conscious as we look at New York right now of the extraordinary oscillations between fear and fraternity, which distinguish the city. We have a gathering of medical professionals who are as much those to whom never so much has been owed by so many to so few as the RAF in the Blitz in London. And yet one of the peculiar conditions of their existence is that we can't see them. So much of our life as we go along the streets of New York involves little intrusions of normalcy laid over what we know is a vast area of the abnormal, largely hidden from view of necessity, because the places where the real crisis is going on are places where it is appropriately dangerous to enter. One of the deepest paradoxes that I tried to write about in the long piece I did, and I'll continue to try and write about in the coming weeks, is the way that the most natural human urge in a time of crisis is to mingle, to gather, to hug, to hold, to caress, to dine, to share. And that's exactly the one impulse that's completely forbidden by the nature of this particular crisis. And obviously it creates all kinds of psychic wounds and psychological distresses that we're only beginning to sketch and to understand. They stretch from everything to the choreography of dog walking, where once we took our dogs out and loved when the dogs extended themselves out at full stretch to meet each other. Now we have to pull back away from our fellow dog owners when the dogs go out late at night. It extends from the psychology and the choreography of dog owning to, I'm told at least, the lust in the city, where after 9/11 there was what was called apocalyptic sex, people thrown together in passion, in normal, understandable, appropriate human passion. Now the very act of intermingling, even with a safe or familiar partner, is suddenly bound about, filled with the scare quotes of fear and hysteria. And so it's part of my obligation, I think, to try and register the psychology of New York as much as the medical professionals are registering and rescuing the medical and the physical condition of New York. Writers' primary obligations is to that psychological condition. I thought a lot about the writer's role in the last few days. The truth is that writers, more I think than any other kinds of creators or makers, fill two roles at once. We are, I hope, at our best, artists who try to organize experience, who try to make private life public in a way that shows us all how shared the monstrous music of our mind can be. But we're also citizens. We report, we editorialize. If you're at the New Yorker, we write what's called comment. And in our role as citizens, our primary responsibility is to bear witness, to go out and say what we saw, to report, as Hemingway once put it, how the weather was. And in that mingling of our role as citizens and artists, we look, I think, to a very special canon, a particular Parnassus of inspirations. For me, the primary one is the great French writer Albert Camus, who more than anyone else, not only in his novels like The Plague, but in all of his writings, mingled the artist's search for perfection of tone with the citizen's necessity of honesty of witness. I'll try to do those things. I'll look up to those examples and try to be, if not worthy of their example, at least obedient to their example. One last thing, people keep asking me, what are you reading while this is going on? And we've been reading the Odyssey, Homer's great work in the translation by Robert Fagles. Why the Odyssey? Well, more than any other book I've ever read, it combines the two things that we all need most right now. It's a book of limitless energy and adventure, audacity and courage, but it's also a book about accepting fate, about the irrationality of fate, about how much of our lives are in the hands of the gods. Bless you all, and thank you for listening.